Hello, folks. It's lovely to have you all here. So this is the Gold Assessed expeditions, which are happening in Cambridgeshire along the Cam rivers. I was on one of them today. Absolutely beautiful. So if you want to see what it's like, have a look on the Joy of Adventure Facebook page. Anyway, it's beautiful today. Tomorrow the weather's not so good, but let's see what happens at the start of your expedition. So the plan for today's meeting, just to kind of give you an agenda, I want to go through the aim of the meeting, which will be then 20 conditions. I know I rabbit on about them, but they are important. Talk about the skills checklist, COVID requirements, kit and equipment, food, cooking and stoves. We'll just confirm your start and end locations, and then all those rules, and then I'll answer any questions that are in the chat box. Okay, so the aim of the meeting today is that by the end of this, you're really, really clear on what you need to do in order to be prepared for your expedition. So it's an assessed expedition, which is why these 20 conditions, which DofE go on and on and on about, is what's really, really important. So your assessor will expect you to know what the 20 conditions are. It's the 20 conditions that you either get congratulations at the end from us. We're really pleased. We want you to pass. Of course, we want you to pass. Or we have to say, actually, you didn't do ... That's one of the 20 conditions. So I'm just going to go through some of the ones. We've only, I think, had to defer one or two groups in the past, and because they've been muppets. Okay, so they've left rubbish behind, or they've done things which just again and again, despite being told, it's like they wanted not to pass. So we want you to pass, and we will warn you if you're doing things that mean that we can't pass you. So the first one's the most important. Your team must plan and organise the expedition and describe the role you've played. Now that's quite an interesting first one, because it's your team, so you're working together as a group, but then in that group you're an individual. So for some of you, I know on the last expedition there was lots of individual stuff that was going on, and the fact that you don't share cooking and you don't share tents pushes you more to being individuals. But I think there's a risk there that you only look after yourself. So it's really, really important that on your assessed expedition that you have an eye for what's going on in the whole of your group. So what's happening on the whole of your group when you're doing the camping? Is there somebody that you can help? Makes sense to help people put their tents up. If someone you think is slow in the morning, why don't you help them? That's all part of being a team. Obviously you're staying together within 2 boat lengths. Some people are much better at map reading than others. Some people are good at cooking. Some people are really good at navigating. So help each other. It's being part of a team. And at the end of it, you need to be able to describe the role you've played. What was the bit you brought to your team? How did you make it happen? We had a silver assessed a couple of weeks ago, and there were some people who just brought joy and life to their team. They were the laughter ones. They were the ones who kept motivating them. I think they called them Mr. Motivator or Miss Motivator, because she just kept on producing a different song to keep them going. So you do need to be able to describe the role, and you need to work together as a team. Part of organising your expedition is your route cards, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Next one, your expedition must have an aim. We've talked about aim on your training. I know some of you are looking at doing how man or humanity has affected the area. I've started to put some documents into the Dropbox for you. There was one that my uncle gave to me last week, which is all about the drainage of the fens going back to Roman times, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. You could basically use that and take photos of each section of that, and that would be your presentation sorted the whole way. Whatever it is, you need to have an aim. Your assessor will be asking you what your aim is. You'll be doing a presentation though in school or to somebody else afterwards. Okay. Gold expedition, minimum 4 days, 3 nights with 8 hours of planned activity. Come on to that with your route cards, but you must have, whatever you do on your route card, the amount of activity must go up to 8 hours. I think someone's got their microphone on. Could you just turn that off? Thank you. The other conditions are there. I'm just stressing the important ones. You can go through and read them. Expeditions are unaccompanied, self-sufficient and properly equipped. Okay, so self-sufficient, you don't go shopping. Yes, you will be going through Ely, and yes, we did have a group in Ely that decided to go shopping. Right, if you're going to do it, no, just don't do it, but certainly don't make it obvious. No, the point is, don't do it. You're self-sufficient. Everything you put into your barrels at day 1 is what you need for the next 4 days. So you will be going through Ely, but we've got spies everywhere. Please, please, please don't go shopping. And you're also properly equipped. All right. Now, part of that means that you need to look what's on the kit list. You also need to use the experience you've had from your training and practice expeditions, and then look at the weather. So I'm meant to be doing load canoeing the next Thursday night and Friday night. The weather is atrocious. It's great. I can cancel it for them. Your DofE expedition won't be cancelled. All right. We went through a hurricane a year ago, and they got blown down a section that you're going to be paddling down. So you need to be properly equipped. If it's going to rain, you need to make sure that you've got waterproofs with you. You had a fantastic practice expedition where it was really hot and wonderful. That might not be the case on your assessed expedition. If you're not properly equipped, that would be one of the things where the assessor wouldn't be able to pass you. Okay, so you need to be properly equipped. One of the things that's in the Dropbox is the skills checklist. You can go through that checklist and just confirm that you can do everything that's on it. If you can tick everything that's on there, that's a really good start for your assessed expedition. But also you can then scan that and put that into your eDofE, because it proves to whoever your person who's managing your eDofE that you have done all your training. Okay. Next one, groups must adhere to the mobile phone policy. Really, really, really important. And it's something as a group you need to help each other. It's really easy that if you've got your phone, that you use it for something other than phoning me or Rod. Okay, you only need your phone on. It's only one phone that needs to be on during the day. You've then got a backup phone, which is in a barrel somewhere, and that needs to be off so the battery keeps going. And we're also going to ask you this time to download the grid reference app. Okay, we're just aware that if something goes really badly wrong, you want to be able to quickly be able to press that grid reference app so that you can tell us where you are. You won't need to use it for any other thing. It's just in case of emergency. We just think it's a wise thing for you to have. Number 16, participants must behave with respect. Of course, I've never had gold groups not behave with respect. Certainly, though, it's respect as regards each other. It's respect as regards the countryside. It's respect as regards the equipment. So just to remind you, you don't carry boats with kit in at the barrels. You have to get the boats into the river before you put the barrels in. Groups must adhere to countryside code. There was one group, and one of you guys that are on this call left your rubbish behind at the end at Wissington. Okay, if that was the case, the assessor would fail you immediately. There was just no negotiation there at all. All right, you must not leave litter behind, whether it's on the campsite, so where you've been camping, but certainly at the end. You take all your rubbish with you. If litter's left behind, that would be you'd be deferred straight away. We can't have litter being left behind. And that's true with toilet paper. So if you need to go to the toilet in the countryside, bring a nappy sack with you. You can then put the toilet paper into that. And then when you get to the campsites, you can then put your nappy sack with the toilet paper into the bins that are in the toilets of the campsite. You should plan and cook appropriate food each day. Now, I know for different people, appropriate food means different things, but have a look at our YouTube videos. I think when Rod asked if people had looked at them before, nobody had, or the group when he asked them, nobody had. Really, really, really recommend that you look at them. Rod is really experienced in doing expeditions. He's done hundreds of them both himself and doing other groups, DofE groups, and there's lots of ideas there so that you can have really, really good food. What tends to be the feedback that most people get is they brought too much snack food. So just work out how much you really need. Number 19, so at the end of the expedition, when you've tidied your barrels away and when you've got the boats perfectly clean onto the trailer and the paddles away and the buoyancy is away, we will then debrief you. It's only then at the end that you'll be able to go, and it's only then that we will tell you if you've passed successfully. We'll be warning you along the way if we think you might not, but if you don't get a warning from us, you can assume you are probably likely going to pass. No, you would be passing if we haven't warned you, because we don't think that's fair if people don't get a warning in order to be able to change behaviour in order to be successful. And then finally, participants must do a presentation after the expedition. So you will need to find somebody after the expedition to whom you can do your presentation too, which is the way it makes it much more sense to do something that's very practical. There was a group, I think they're going to the River Spey, who did yoga coming down the river. What a great thing to do. You can just video yourself. There was another group that was doing different group work, so you can just say what group work you did and have photos of you doing it. I really like the geocaching one. I don't know if some of you were at Hilgi when there was people there who were throwing in magnets, and they were then pulling out metal stuff from the river. I think that'd be a great thing to do. What can you pull out from the river? So whatever you do, you need to have something that's really practical that you can do a really clear presentation on at the end. Okay. So if that's the case and you've done all that, congratulations, you've completed your expedition section. So that's fantastic. Okay. So some of the things that we need to go through. Now, you'll have all heard this before if you've done an expedition with us. I know there's a couple of people on this call who haven't, so therefore it's just worth me going through it. COVID procedures haven't changed, folks. So we still need to abide by them. We've still got we're good to go visit England Kite Mart, which is great. But these are the rules that the government have said that we've got to abide by. So you don't need to be in your groups of 6, but you do have to be 2 meters apart. And I know some of you were frustrated last time when I moved you because you were too close. You were camped too close to the person next to you. This is your assessed expedition. So the assumption from us will be is that you will put up your tent over 2 meters from somebody else. So put them in a nice big circle with your group, but they must be 2 meters apart. Okay. Really important, that one. Cooking is individual stoves. Now I know we've got I've got a couple of sisters who are joining us. That's great. So you can obviously camp together and cook together, but even in social bubbles in England, you have to cook separately and you have to sleep separately. Wash kit. Those of you who come on expedition know that we've got some lovely tents. They're all toilet tents. They're nice and clean and they don't smell and they're really nice, but you do need your own hand wash kit. The only thing that's missing from that picture is nappy sacks, okay, or doggy bin bags, because you need to make sure that you can take your rubbish away with you. So just to stress that, all rubbish that you bring on expedition, you take away. So if that's the case, get rid of all the packaging that you can before you come. Number, paddles and buoyancy aid. Yes, you will have your paddle and your buoyancy aid. So for those of you who've done expeditions with us before, you know whether you like a long yellow paddle or if you prefer the shorter blue paddles, the choice is yours. They're all numbered. You're responsible for that. And just remember, neither your paddle is left on the ground, nor is your buoyancy aid left on the ground and got sat on. It's the sitting on a buoyancy aid that destroys them. Boats are all numbered, so you can you'll have your boat, and once you've worked out who's best at the front and best at the back, then you can stay in those positions. So just to confirm what our COVID rules are, okay, so it's personal tent, camping and cooking equipment, individual expedition food, bring your own labeled hand gel, label it because everybody's got loads of hand gel. We are saying 1 mask per day of expedition. If you're going to help somebody put up a tent, you may well be within 2 meters, and then it would be a good, you've then got the choice of wearing a mask if you want to. Again, your soap in a labeled container. Soap, hard soap is much, much better and cheaper and better for the environment than liquid soap. A plastic tub, so you can do your washing up in it, but you can also wash your hands in it. And then 2 large mouth water containers. I know we've probably said in some cases we want you to bring 2 litres, or is it 2 1 litres? You need at least 2 litres of water. Okay, on the first day of your expedition, well, I've had all the days of your expedition, it's really difficult for us to fill you up with water. So we will give you a 5 litre container as a group, which will have water in it, which you can have with you, but you need to arrive at the start of your expedition full of water, okay, so that you've got your water bottles completely full. And just while I'm talking about water and therefore going to the toilet, there are no toilets at the start of the expedition. So if you think you're going to need to go to the toilet, Sainsbury's isn't that far away from the start at Huntingdon, but you need to go there before the time when you're meant to be on expedition. We've got quite a few groups setting off, and so the time at which you leave is critical for us. And then finally, you need a permanent marker pen and you need waterproof maps. We've said that per group, you need 2 of the proper maps, the OS maps, And if you're printing them off from eDofE, you need to print them off so they're big enough, all right? Lots of you had them printed too small last time, so at least 1 kilometre per 2 centimetres. So it's 1K per 2 centimetres. And you must do it in colour and get rid of that line. Lots of you had that line which you get from DofE down the middle of the river, and then you can't see where it's going. So you do need to get rid of that. That's part of your preparation. I'll come on to that in a minute, but you must have that. If you're not prepared when you arrive an expedition with that, that's a big no-no. Okay. All right. Google Forms. At 2 minutes to 5, only 13 people had filled out the Google form. The deadline for that was 4 o'clock today. I feel I'm nagging, but you need to fill it in. If you don't fill it in, you can't come on expedition, and it makes our life a real nightmare because we can't get them all set up for the people. All your medical forms and numbers, I have to get printed off and sent to all the people who are supervising. So if you haven't filled out the Google form, make sure you do it, please, now. No, not now, at the end of the call. Okay. Okay, expedition planning. All right, your route cards are due in by Sunday night, 9 p.m. on Sunday night. Okay. We've put an explanation on your Dropbox of how to do the route cards. There's also a YouTube video on how to do the route cards. But just to be clear, it's 8 hours of activity. So that 8 hours of activity can be all canoeing. It can be if the gap between the campsites is too short, you can do go for a walk, plan something. In Ely, for instance, go for a great walk. Especially if you're doing the effect of humanity, go and have a walk around Ely Cathedral, put that in as part of your activity. So in the first day, you'll have lots of locks, and you will need to add, I think there's 5 locks on the first day. So you will need to have half an hour per lock. Yeah, so that's just part of it. Escape routes, that's where the nearest road is. Some of the sections you're going are quite remote, so you need to say, do you go to river left or right? Where is the nearest road? Your aim must be there. Route description, what's the river doing? Is it going mainly north or mainly south or mainly east? Is it wiggling? Yeah, just, it's a really brief description. But you do need to put that in. And checkpoints tend to be the obvious things. So bridges are easy, locks are easy. You can make it up where you want it to be, but probably you're going to have 6 different sections of about 2 hours long. So it may be in those sections you go through a couple of locks, so you can put that into your route description. Okay, so that's the route cards. They must be in by Sunday night because I've then got Monday to get them sorted. Okay, so don't be late. What else? Okay, so getting ready for your expedition, you need to get your kit ready. Those of you who've done expeditions with us before, you know what worked for you when you were doing your you know what worked for you when you were doing your kit before. Check what the weather's doing. You'll know 5 days before the forecast begins to get good. So get your kit ready, get it into separate bags. So the bags that you know are going to go into the blue barrels, then have one bag, which is your kind of day bag, and try to have as little as possible in any other bag. All right, try and get everything into those blue barrels because that then makes it the organizing in your boat much better. Plan your food. Okay, so you've all cooked before, you saw what other people brought, have a look at what Rod's put on the YouTube, but plan your food, get it organized, know what you're doing. Okay, sort out your aim, decide what you're going to do. Do you need to borrow a camera? Do you need to get an oxygen monitor so you can test the oxygen in the water? Get organized, know what you're doing. Okay, mark your maps. So once you've done your route card, then you can mark your maps. And again, on the YouTube video, we explain how to mark your maps. So you're going to put a mark every kilometre, and you're also going to circle the key things going down river. Particularly if you're going to go for a walk, add that bit in, mark that on there. So your map then becomes the thing that you're going to use. And you can then take a photo of your map and put that onto your eDofE. But have a look on the YouTube, and it will explain there really clearly how to mark your map if you've forgotten what we said on expedition. Okay. So those of you who are borrowing tents from us or stoves from us, you'll have added that to the Google form. We will send you a link because all the tents and the stoves are from Access Expeditions. We want you to have a look at their video on how to put up a tent and how to use a stove. If you're not using the same stove or same tent that you were on your practice expedition, put it up. Make sure you know how to make it work. Put it up in the garden. Is everything there? Have you got the right poles? Have you got enough pegs? Does your stove work? Those of you that are borrowing tents from us, you need to bring a £5 for those, both the tent and the stove. We rent them out for a £5 each, just covers the costs. The tents will all have 10 tent pegs. I've gone through and counted them all. So you need to make sure at the end they have 10 tent pegs. If they don't, you're going to have to pay for them. And the same with your stove. All the stoves have been cleaned. You need to hand them back really, 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 really clean. So the next person gets them in a good state as well. Okay. So on the day of the expedition, you need to arrive with everything ready to go. So you're going to arrive in Huntingdon Riverside car park. It's much easier if you have everything, so you have it all separated, so that very quickly you can then get the boats off the trailer, get your barrels, get your buoyancies, get your paddles, so you're organized and you can then set off on expedition. Okay. You definitely do need a day bag. This is what we suggest you put into your day bag. So it's stuff you're obviously going to need for the day. Do check what the weather's going to do. The last group that set off from there, they set off in sunshine, but within an hour it started to rain. So thank goodness they had their waterproof clothing out. Okay. Arrive in Huntingdon with your in your canoe kit. Don't get changed there. Just arrive wearing the kit. So check what the weather's doing. If it's going to be cold and wet, like it's going to be for the next week, then wellies are good. Whatever you put on your feet, they need to be able to stay on if you fall in or you're standing in the river. Do suggest that probably on the campsite you've got flip-flops rather than wellies. Definitely not walking boots. If you don't like wearing wellies, that's fine. You just need something that you can stand in the river. So if you're going to wear old trainers, that's great. Again, have a look at the YouTube. We've got a whole thing on YouTube on what kit to use depending on what the weather is doing, and also how to pack your boat. So for those of you who haven't done expeditions with us before, really, really recommend you go onto the Joy of Adventure YouTube and you have a look at those videos. It will give you all the information and answer lots of the questions and get you just better prepared. So you're going to start off in Huntingdon Riverside car park. If you've got you will have parents, I'm guessing, driving you there. There's a one-way system in Huntingdon, which is a nightmare. So just make sure you know where you're going, and please arrive at the time which we've said. Okay. If you're a 9 o'clock start, get there at 9 o'clock so that we can have all the groups nicely spread out. You're then responsible for getting your group together, getting your boats, getting your paddles, getting organised. You're all young adults. You all know how to do it. This is your assessed expedition. You just need to get organised and get going. You will then it's a lovely bit of river. I was on it earlier today. So you go down through Huntingdon, then St Ives, through various locks. For those of you, the first few locks we will be with you on. I know that some of you have got people who are over 18 in your groups, which is great, because that means that then you're able, if we assess you as being competent, you'll be able to go through the locks without us being with you. But we will check that first, obviously, before we let you go through the locks. The final lock that you'll do on your first day is Hermitage Lock. And this is a huge, great big lock. It's the lock that takes you from sea level down into the fens below sea level. There's often a seal there, and that's a manned lock. So you have to get through that by 6 o'clock at night. If you don't, you're stuck and you're then carrying the boats over the river and over the road and down, which is a nightmare. This takes you into the river that's called the Old West. The Old West used to flow east, which I think is amazing. And there's that, in those of you doing the man's impact on the environment, this is a huge one. The fact that man has made this river turn a different way round, and in the document that's in your Dropbox, it explains that. Okay. So that night you will then end up camping at Flatbridge Farm, which is right on the river. Really nice farm, really nice campsite. And then the next day you'll set off down the Old West and you end up joining the River Cam, and then going a little south to Duckett's Farm, which is up where, and this is a photo of Duckett's Farm, and you can see you're right on the river. It's lovely, and the sun, you set up and the sun sets in this picture to your right hand side, so you sorry, the left hand side, so you get to see it. It's beautiful. Okay, the next day you will set off down river, okay, and you go down the Ouse to Ely, and it's a beautiful, the river on this on your expedition changes a lot, from being very tight and narrow, and then the bit between Duckett's Farm and Ely's broad and meandering, but then you hit the bit between Ely and Littleport, and that is the section which is very, very, very straight. It will probably be the hardest bit of your expedition. It is the section which the Oxford to Cambridge boat race was on. It was very straight, and you are just praying the wind is behind you. So it will blow you down this section and you will be able to sail it. If it's against you, you will just have to keep paddling, knowing that every paddle stroke you take gets you closer and closer to it. But I just think it's great to warn you. If the wind's against you, really hard work. And you just have to grit it, bear it, do it, as other groups before you have done. Then that night you'll end up at a Millennium Wood campsite, where some of you have been before, and you can have fires. And there it's got a more of a proper toilet, so lots of people enjoyed that one. And then the next day you'll set off and you'll go down to Denver Sluice. Just to make it a little different from your practice expedition, Denver Sluice is really key. It's actually where the river from Erith goes straight down to Denver Sluice, while you're doing a bit of a bend that goes around. So again, man on humanity. If Denver Sluice wasn't there, the river would be salt water all the way up to Ely, and it would completely change the nature of the fens. So it's a fascinating, Denver Sluice is a fascinating section to see. Then you'll come back up the river. It's only about 1 kilometre, and then you go up the River Wissey, and you go through the little village of Hilgy, and it's a nice wiggly river, lots of wildlife on it, and you will end up at Wissington Beet Factory at the fishing lakes. And then when everything is sorted and you have got your boats cleaned and there's no rubbish left behind, and you've got the barrels nice and clean and dry, and the paddles in the trailer and the buoyancy aids are put away, we will then debrief you, and we will be able to tell you if you have passed your gold expedition. So congratulations if that's the case. That will be just great. So a few other things that's just really good to remind you about now. Some rules, don't have very many of them. Buoyancy aids, if you're by the river or on the river, your buoyancy aid is on and it's done up. If you are going to cool off, which hopefully you'll want to, we can't have swimming on DofE, but we can have you cooling off. So that means you just keep your buoyancy aid on, and you have somebody on the bank. So if something goes wrong, they can then come and help you. Okay, so that's another of the rule. I suppose we do have a normal school rules apply, so it's definitely no alcohol and no smoking and no illegal substances, folks. Okay, so that's part of our rules, and that's part of our respect, and therefore that's part of the DofE 20 conditions. Okay, mobile phones, we've said that you can bring 2. One is the emergency phone, and one is the emergency phone. And if you could add the grid reference app to that, that will then help you if things go wrong, and you'll be able to tell us exactly where you are by just pressing that app. Okay, it works really, really well. But just to confirm, those phones are not used for anything else, and you don't use your phone until after the debrief has happened. The expedition goes on right until the end of the debrief. So somebody wants to know if they could phone their parents while they finished, before they'd finished, and the answer is no. If parents want to confirm that you're there, they can always text us. Okay, so both for you and any parents that are listening, we do post pictures on the Joy of Adventure Facebook page. There's photos there from your practice expedition. There's photos I've just put of this expedition, well, this night I had away last night, and a little section of the river that you'll be going down. Stunningly beautiful. So we're nearly there. So key things not to forget: you need to mark your map, you need to sort your kit out into separate bags, you need to organise your aim, you need to bring at least 2 litres of water, practice your stove and putting up your tent. And if you're borrowing a stove or a tent from us, we will send you a link to watch a film on how to do it. You need to plan your food and do check the weather. You can see this group in this photo. This was going through Hermitage Lock, a silver group, a couple of weeks ago, and that was the day it really rained. It was horrible for them. In the middle of that, it was just after you'd done your training expedition. So you can see they've got jackets on and ponchos and all the rest of it, because it was horrible. But at least they could dry off the next day. That was then fine. Okay. So I'm going to have a look and see if we've got any questions in the chat box. But if you've got any other questions, once you ask them, please do. Very happy to do that. Yeah, I made an error of the PCR test. No, we don't need to take the PCR test, but if you could take the lateral flow test, that would be just great. Okay, so you don't need to take the PCR test. Please take the lateral flow test 48 hours before the expedition. And obviously, if you get symptoms, if it's positive, we don't want you on expedition. If somebody in your group on expedition shows signs of COVID, then the whole of your group will have to end your expedition. Sorry about that. And if you come into contact, or if anyone in your household 14 days before the expedition has COVID or COVID symptoms, then you won't be able to come. So I'm based just outside of Bottisham. Lots of you I know are local as well, and there was somebody from Bottisham was meant to come canoeing with me on Monday night and couldn't come because somebody in their class had got COVID. So COVID is around, folks. Be aware, okay? So keep your distance, wash your hands, use face masks, and you'll be fine. Okay. Any other questions that I can answer for you? I think what I'll do is I'll just stop the recording, and then we will be able to, if you've got any other questions, you can ask.